What's up, guys? Welcome to NMD TV, Canes all day. If you rock it with the U, then you know what to do. Hit that like and subscribe button so you never miss out on a video. Every week after the game, we got the instant reaction with me, Grant Long, NMD TV, and Chris with Canes Legacy and Canes Insight. Chris, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. 2-0 feels really good.
2-0 Miami Hurricanes. Our Canes win 47-34. So let's dive right into it, man. I just want to go right into it, man. It is a exciting feeling, but it's also I feel like we got a lot to worry about feeling. So do you think we should start off with the good or the bad? Which one do you want to start off with?
It's a win, so I go start with the good, and then we could talk a little bit about, the things that we definitely need to clean up for sure by the time we get to like Clemson week.
Okay. So we want to talk about the good. And I'll start off right off the back, and then I'll let you piggyback off of me. I want to do kind of like just a word. What word would you use to describe tonight? And obviously, this is something that I was thinking about throughout the game. And the word I would use to talk about what happened tonight was the word I would use would be respond, because I don't think I've ever seen a Miami Hurricanes offense respond like this Miami Hurricanes offense did. Every time it seemed like Louisville was creeping back in the game, D'Eriq King, Cameron Harris, Jalen Knighton, Brevin Jordan, Mallory. It just felt like we always had an answer. And if everybody listen to this, you who follow the Canes, this is a feeling that we haven't felt before. Usually when we give up some points, we think, oh, here we go again. How will this game end? But it just felt like every punch we took, our offense punched back. So the word I would use would be, I am very excited and happy about how the offense and team responded to adversity today. What would you say to that? And do you have something that a word that you would use, or something that shocked you, or something that you took away from the night?
Well, I think that's definitely a great point. And like you said, a lot of us Canes fans, especially like over the past like 2 decades now, have kind of been ingrained in that. We get punched in the mouth, we're not going to come right back. And if the people that were fans from before that time, like, we were used to being the one that did the punching, and then knowing the other team wasn't going to be able to come back. So, having that ability to, keep, and when I was thinking about words, like, my word would probably be energy, because, Lashley has this like energy that no matter what's going on, even if things are going well, there was a couple of times you saw him really ripping into his guys to making sure that they were doing the right thing, even in little situations there. So I think D'Eriq King's leadership, like, they keep the energy up no matter what. So even if the defense gives up a long drive and Louisville gets a touchdown, I think it was in the Canes offensive heads and said, the defense has picked us up in years past. Like, if we get a big score, we get a big play here, we get a good drive here, then that gets washed right away. That gets erased, and the defense can have another chance to come back and do the right thing. And I think that they responded so well in those 2 huge plays, obviously in the third quarter, were such a big part of the end result, and kept putting that, like, the pressure on, keeping the gas pedal down. It put us in a great situation, and I just love the fact that we have an offensive coordinator and a quarterback that seem to be so in tune with each other, because when you have those 2 guys that never seem to get too rattled, always seem to be excited to get out there and make a play, I think it really works out well.
I agree with that. And I would also like to point this out, man. I got so many thoughts going through my mind, because I think tonight told me a lot about this team. But something I noticed was D'Eriq King and Rhett Lashley and Cameron Harris, they all are about business. And what examples would people, they would say, how would you know that? D'Eriq King tonight, he throws a touchdown. When they flash to him on the sideline, he's never like celebrating or anything. He's never, just over there smiling. It's like he's looking at plays. He's focused. He's in tune with the game. Cameron Harris, they told the story tonight. He don't want the touchdown rings. He don't want none of that. Rhett Lashley, even when things were going good offensively, he's yelling at the offense.
Mm-hmm.
So, what would you say to having three leaders? Because I do look at Cameron Harris and De'Aaron King as the leaders of this offense, and of course Rhett Lashley. What would you say to the business-like approach of our Miami Hurricanes?
I think it's great. I think that's the kind of stuff that comes into play when you have guys with, legitimate like big picture in mind. Like they have a job that they want to get done. They have short-term goals here and they have long-term goals. I think in the past we may have had, obviously last year there was a big question about maturity at the quarterback position. But I think again, not only last year, we had it the year before that too. And it's been this issue that's been really one of the biggest problems that Miami's had. And then all of a sudden this year you have Lashley, who wants to prove himself at a big time school that he's not just, a guy that worked with Gus Malzahn, like he can do his own thing. He wants to be a head coach down the line. So this is like a big money year for him. Then you have De'Aaron King, who wants to prove to everybody that 2 years ago wasn't a fluke, that he can be a real quarterback, that he could be, a championship quarterback and eventually an NFL quarterback. And then you have Cam Harris, who, when he came in, people talk. I mean, you have a Carroll City kid. Those kids, when they come in ready to play. And, everybody talked about Lingard and it was going to be this, it was going to be that. And even when Lingard was leaving, everyone, there was a lot of talk about, well, like, how did Miami lose this guy? And he basically came out and said, like, it's fine, let him go. I'm here. So they all had a lot to prove, and short term, long term. And I think they're really taking an opportunity and stepping forward. And when you have guys like that who are going to step forward, I think a lot of other people start to realize, like, oh, I need to be responsible for myself. And, like you were saying, like, when Lashley gets into that offensive line, he has a quarterback there who's right there next to him, expecting that kind of greatness. So it all works out. And, I'm excited to see that the rest of those guys in the offense continue to step up with more opportunities.
All right, guys, we got Chris from Canes Legacy. You can find him on Twitter, and he also writes articles for Canes Insight. So, De'Aaron King goes 18-30 for 325 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Cameron Harris, 134 yards, only on 9 carries, which is weird when you look at that. Brevin Jordan, 7 receptions, 120 yards, 1 touchdown. If you're critiquing the offense, give me some things that Miami needs to work on.
Well, I think the receiver play. It's easy to say, like, the receivers when you've had, like such great play from the tight end position. Mallory, like you said earlier in the show, like he was tremendous, and he's finally, getting his spots and finding his spots. I think also, like, big picture, Lashley, like in terms of game planning for Brevin and Mallory to be out there at the same time, I think it was a lot clearer this week what they wanted to do with those two guys. Like, I think last week, the whole first half, Brevin was basically like targeted maybe once or twice. It really didn't have a big impact, but you could tell he wanted Brevin split out wide. He wanted Mallory split out wide some spots. He wanted them to be blocking on screen, so it worked out. But the receivers, a lot of drops. 2 of them really, really, really bad drops that could have led to touchdowns, and one which was a guaranteed touchdown. That's the kind of stuff that can't happen. Harley himself, I'm sure he'd be the first to tell you he didn't have a great game. A guy that a lot of us expected to be the one who benefited the most from last year's offense. I'm excited to see the young guys get more time as things go on, but we'll see how that works out. And I think also the interior of the offensive line was not great today. And going in the year, my guy was, DJ Scaife at right guard. I figured he would be the rock, and everyone kind of like work off of his, high level of play. And he was not good tonight. I don't think Gaynor was very good, and I saw Clark got beat quite a bit. So, I think the interior of the line definitely has to step up, especially if we're getting good play from the tackles, which was where we struggled so mightily last year. So I think receiver and the interior line definitely have to step up. And we go into against FSU. FSU is strong at defensive tackle and strong at the cornerback position. So, that's their strengths on defense. We definitely have to make some plays.
Man, and you make a very good point with what you just said. Football, and the way I look at football is it's all about matchups. Just because Florida State looked bad week 1 we're 2-0 doesn't mean we're just going to automatically win the game. And then you just throw out there Florida State's strength is what's looking to be our weaknesses,
Right.
and that's a very good point. Also, when you speak of the offensive line, I felt like there was a lot of penalties, false starts and things like that. And I want to see if that's going to be a trend, because I think we still got to remember that this is the beginning of the year, and there was no training camp or things like that. But one thing that I cannot let go is what you talked about, the receiver play.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, Harley dropping a wide open touchdown pass. Harley, you're a senior. Pope, the ball's floated perfectly over a defender. One of the hardest throws to make, to me, and I could be wrong on this, but to me it looked like it was a cover two type of look where you got to throw it in between the corner and the safety, and De'Aaron King throws it right over the fingertips of a defender. Pope, you got to at least make the catch.
Yeah, for sure.
This week, we lost a cornerback, Christian Williams, former 4-star, and we don't know the exact reason, but a lot of people think because of the play of DJ Ivy, Christian Williams thought he deserved more times. That was just a rumor, And I said this in a group chat. If our receiver play continues this way, we may lose some of these young receivers that we've been bragging about all year. Now, what I want you to do is either talk me off the cliff on that statement, or do you think it's time for us to give some of these young bucks a chance?
Yeah, it's the one thing that's hard is that, like, how good some of the guys are just based upon the high school play and the reputations they come in with, but you never know exactly how they look in practice. Never know how they're picking up on the little things that the coaches really need from them. And if when last year with Stubblefield, like, you can imagine Stubblefield, like, less experienced, he could be playing favorites, or he could say, like, this guy might be better, so let me get him out there, and without really trusting the opinion. But Coach Likens, he's got so much experience, and he knows the position so well, and he's produced NFL players, guys that maybe should have never even had a shot at the league. He developed them into NFL players. So you have to trust his judgment, but at the same time, you really hope that these young guys are able to get on the field, because there's some talented kids that we have as freshmen, as true freshmen. And you see Michael Redding getting a little bit of time in there. Physically, he's the one that, like, you think right away, well, look at this guy. Like, this kid looks like he's a third-year player. Restrepo obviously impressed a lot with people that were watching through camps and stuff. So you hope that they can, just so that you have depth there beyond just the top couple guys, especially, not sure exactly what Peyton's deal is going to be going into next week. So you hope that they'll step up, or at least just have the older guys just make those plays. Those older guys make those easy plays they're supposed to make, and we're not even having this conversation.
All right. So do you think the coaching staff is going to, this is just obviously us talking a speculation, but do you think, these guys like Pope, Harley, give them a chance, continue to ride with them, or would you like to see a rotation of the younger players?
I think as the year goes on, they're going to get more time, be it just to, like, make sure that they're ready to go when their time is, like, officially called.
Because I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I do want to say next week is Florida State prime time under the lights. No matter how bad Florida State is, it's going to be a nerve-wracking game. I feel like it would be kind of irresponsible just to throw them in that spotlight.
Yeah, and it's got to be tough. You got to pick and choose your spots, and the first three games we've had are going to be primetime TV games. Like, yeah, the first was ACC Network, but it was still, like, one of the only games on at the time. So if you wanted to watch football, you were watching that one. So I think there's no, like, warm up easy game against whoever that you could just throw whoever you want on the field and, like, get them run. So you're right. It's going to be a stressful environment whenever they get in there. And I think about in years past when we've been forced to play young guys against teams like Florida State, even knowing what the deal is with Florida State this year so far and the expectations being very low, the environment will be intense because of how well those guys know each other. And the long history of the rivalry. So it would add a lot to it. And I'd love to get a couple of guys with some run there. And if they can handle it, it's a great sign for our future for sure.
So last week we talked about, and one of the things you mentioned was the lack of having Brevin Jordan involved in the offense. And tonight, 7 receptions, 120 yards, 1 touchdown, 47 was his longest. He's jumping over people. He's making these amazing catches. He's lined up inside. He's lined up outside. What are your thoughts on how Rhett Lashley used Brevin Jordan and just your overall thoughts of his play tonight?
We joked last week that, it was so strange to see that, like, the guy that is obviously your best offensive player, maybe like he and King right there, but one of the guys that's your best offensive players not being a featured part of the offense. And I was like, well, the only reason that they wouldn't make him a featured part of the offense this week is because they're trying to hide everything for next week, and everything they do is centered around Brevin. And it kind of came to fruition pretty early. I think it was the first pass of the game was designed for him. They were lining him up out in the slot quite a bit. They had him in that wing back spot that he used a lot when he was up at UConn. They really put him in a lot of different positions. And I think on top of that, you knew it was something that they really worked on because Mallory was on the field a lot more. And even Mallory had like his own design thing to be out there with Jordan. So I'm sure Lashley was going through his options and figured out that having these two guys on the field as much as possible was really a benefit. And Mallory had that one long play called back. So if that wasn't called back, it would have been like the tight ends combining for almost 200 yards of receiving between the two of them. So I think Lashley definitely knew that he had to get Brevin the ball as much as possible. I mean, in your opinion, Grant, like, is there a guy on our offensive side of the ball that is a harder mismatch for defenses?
I think Brevin and King, I think both of them are mismatches, but it's what do you do? It's what do you do with Brevin Jordan as a defensive guy? You put a linebacker on him, do you put a safety on him? And it's tough. It's tough. And I think King, it's so crazy because I think King is the perfect quarterback because when King puts that football out, for Cam Harris, the play fake for Mallory or for Brevin Jordan is going to be there.
Yeah, for sure. And that's that thing. And we saw it later in the game when the pass to Pope, where Pope almost took it in for a touchdown. And then we also saw it on the Knighton play where the linebackers were frozen just by the thought of it being QB power. They have to play up. And, those linebackers, like you said, they're not going to be able to run with Brevin Jordan. Safeties aren't going to be able to jump and be physical with Brevin Jordan. And corners, you might as well forget it because he's just going to body them off in about half a second. So, they need multiple guys there to cover him. High-low bracket something. And you can't bracket a guy if your linebacker's taking 3 steps forward expecting it to go to camp. So I think they'll continue to do a lot of damage with him. And I think no matter who we play against, even if it's a team like Clemson, the King to Jordan match, like the King to Jordan connection, that's good enough to beat them. But the problem is are the other 9 guys good enough to beat them, that's going to be tough.
And I'll say this, and this is where our wide receiver play comes in. When you play a team like Clemson, I actually watched the first quarter of Clemson, and literally Clemson versus Wake Forest, I think it was week 1. And the first drive, 2 freshman defensive linemen got sacked. So why that's important is, teams are going to eventually say, okay, if Pope is dropping balls, if Harley's dropping balls, if we can't connect on deep passes, well, we're just going to stack the box. We're going to double Brevin Jordan. We're just going to see, can they beat us? If they beat us deep, we'll risk it. So I think there will be a point where we need our wide receivers to make big plays. We're not going to need them against Louisville, obviously. We're not going to need them against UAB, obviously. We won't need them against Florida State, I don't think. But when you go up against teams like Clemson, like a Notre Dame, those coaching staffs are going to say, let's stop Brevin Jordan and let's try to let everybody else beat us.
Yeah, for sure. And that's kind of like what we did on the defensive side of the ball for, I know later in the game it got kind of away from us, especially as time of possession started getting slanted more towards Louisville. But, early in the game, there was no Tutu Atwell really because the game planning was specifically to stop him. And with no Tutu, the rest of the Louisville offense looked pretty bad. eventually they put up all kinds of points in the second half when they started to figure things out and make adjustments. But that shock to the system, that's enough to get some space. And if Clemson were to shock us like that and take Brevin totally away, we're gonna get boat raced because they're gonna put up 49 in the first half. So it's definitely something that we need to pay attention to, and have adjustments ready to go for if they do take Brevin away.
All right. So before we move on to the defensive side of the ball, let's get a MVP of the offensive side. Who would be your MVP tonight from the offensive side?
If I could give it to Lashley, I want to give it to Lashley because he was he stirred the drink for everybody today. He got Cam Harris the ball in some good situations before Cam got had to come out for a little bit. He figured out ways of getting Jalen Knight in the ball in the pass game, which was a great setup for that play. He got Brevin and Will Mallory involved. Like, he really was able to work with King to spread the ball around quite a bit, and it made the offense as good as it could be. Now, there were some rough patches in there, but when the offense was really clicking, you could tell that this is just the tip of the iceberg for what we can really be here, and I think this thing gets consistent. So I'd give it to Lashley, and I think that he would probably hand it off to all of his guys, but I go Lashley first.
Did you think Rhett Lashley was too conservative at the end of the first half?
Yeah, I do. And I don't know. That might be a top-down thing. That might be a Manny Diaz, saying, let's not mess it up because our defense hasn't been good. We don't want to give up a big play, or, I don't know, because that doesn't seem like a Lashley kind of mentality. But Lashley also is the kind of person that, likes to use the run to set everything else up. And the inside of the offensive line was not good. So, a lot of what he tried to do on the interior was getting bottled up by Louisville pretty quick because the interior linemen really weren't getting any kind of push. So he was probably figuring that, he could go for a big play, but he didn't want to get a quick 3 and out. So he tried to run the ball more to see if he could set something up, and it wasn't working out. I see what he was probably trying to do, but, when it doesn't work, it's easy to say, why'd you run it that many times? Why not try to go up top? Why not try to? But it kind of is what it is. And I think it worked out. And I think going into next week against Florida State, if they're in a similar position, he'll probably do something different, especially if the inside of the line is having as much trouble as today.
So, and let me know if you think, what would you say to this? But I disagree with you. I think, and some people hit me up on Twitter, and I was happy with what Rhett Lashley did. I thought that was a time where the offense was not clicking. The first quarter, we did amazing. The second quarter, the offense really wasn't clicking. A lot of flags, a lot of things slowed us down. So here was my thing is, hey, we got a lead. Let's just get into the locker room and make adjustments. I'm always okay with that because if you try to come out and be aggressive when you're up 20-6, Now, if we're playing Clemson, I understand, throwing all your marbles on the table. But against Louisville, in their home, you're up 20-6. The offense isn't doing good. I say let's get to the locker room, let's regroup, and then let's come out with a game plan in the second half.
Yeah, it's definitely a philosophical thing that you have to go with, and who you're playing is a big part of it. Like you said, if it was Clemson, that you wanted they're going to come back strong to do as much as you can. And I do think that mentality is probably something that Manny Diaz shares as a defensive guy, because he's probably thinking to himself, we're up by 2 scores here. Let's not mess something up. Let's not give him an easy touchdown. Let's get through it, come out of the half up 2 touchdowns, and trust our defense to get the job done. And really, if you believe that they could do it, it would make a lot of sense. It just, for me, I think the style of the offense is to push as much as possible, but it's such a weird way that they do it with that power spread game and with running the ball that it's not as easy for him to kind of speed up and slow down as it is, which is, like you said, they were struggling for a little bit there at the end of the first half. So it's probably why they ended up looking the way it did, whether it was intended conservativeness or not. So it really worked out for us today. So I think if it's next week against Florida State, I think you go for the jugular, because that team, that Florida State team, they are so emotional, and we've seen it over the past couple of years. Like once momentum goes against them, they break down completely. You go up 3 scores on Florida State, they might not even come out of the half. I know their coach probably won't be there anyway, but the rest of the team might not come out of the half either.
Well, and I'll say this, last week Cameron Harris had a big run. This week he had a 75-yarder. I mean, it's easy to see that the run doesn't work and you say, oh, he's being conservative. But if one of those runs breaks, hey, so
Yeah.
I like the idea of getting into the second half. Let's move over to the defensive side. So Miami wins 47-34, okay? Miami did give up 34 points. No matter how you slice it and dice it, we gave up 34 points today to a Louisville team. And let's see, Louisville was 3-4 on fourth down. 370 over 300 yards passing through the air, 209 rushing yards through the air. I'm not even making sense. 209 rushing yards, 370 yards passing through the air, a total of 516 yards. Some highs and lows, but I want to know your biggest takeaway on this team, but on this defensive side. But what would you say to me saying I think this defense really, really, really misses Gregory Rousseau?
I was thinking about it during the game because I saw someone talk about, like, could you imagine a rotation with those 3 guys, like those 3 ends? And I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about how that would look and what that would be like, because I don't think there's any stretch. Like, I think one of the easiest statements you can make about this Miami team, about what we saw today and last week, is that the best player on the defensive side of the ball is Jalen Phillips. I think he has been absolutely outstanding, phenomenal. Like, there's nothing that he hasn't done that I would say, man, I wish he would have, I wish he could have. He's been fantastic. And I mean that like on a play-to-play level. There, like last week, I went back to look at the defensive line specifically just to see how things were developing, because I wanted to see like Harrison Hunt and some of the other young guys. And then you watch just Phillips play to play, and like he does his job every single play. Like he's always pushing the tackle back. Like that right tackle for Louisville, when he doesn't get drafted in a couple of years, like the NFL teams might as well just send him that, like say, hey, do you remember that game against Phillips? That's a pro you played against, and he did that to you. That's why you're not getting drafted. But like, so let's just say Rousseau's there, right? If Rousseau is there, Phillips or Rousseau is probably going to have to either play right end. So what happens with Roche, or Rousseau plays inside at defensive tackle, which he did in spurts last year and was really effective when he played inside, like in the FSU game a lot. So if he plays inside at tackle, which I think would make us the strongest, I think this defensive line would be the best in the country. Like, and I say that confidently, knowing how good some of the defensive lines are. It would really depend on how they wanted to use those 3, I think, for me to say that, because I wouldn't want to take Phillips off the field for a snap if I didn't have to. So that's the one piece I'd have to know, like, is how it would look. Because I don't think taking Phillips away, like if I don't even know, honestly, and it sounds crazy, I don't even know if I would trade Phillips for Rousseau. And I know it seems like sacrilege to say it. I don't even know if I would do that.
You're talking crazy now.
Talking
crazy now, Chris.
When we get to April, and people start talking about the draft, and that there's going to be some talk coming before then that maybe this Phillips kid from Miami is a better prospect.
No. You think Phillips is going to be drafted over Rousseau?
I think if he plays like the way he did today, the rest of the season, I think he's a top 15 pick. And if Rousseau does all the stuff he's supposed to, and like he tests well and all that, and like depending how the combine and everything looks, and people still love that tape from last year, even with the missed year, he's going top 15. That means we got 2 guys up there. Now, where they fall, I think depends on the fit and the need for the teams. Like I think they're very different players. So it's not as easy to say like he's edge 1, he's edge 2. I think they're very different with what NFL teams will want to do, but I do think it's possible that Phillips could get picked higher than Rousseau, just because he was tremendous, and he's been tremendous, and he's just physically so dominant of a player. Personally, like he looks like peak. I remember when Michael Strahan was really like dominant out there on the end. Like Michael Strahan always played that left end spot too for the Giants. He reminds me of Michael Strahan when Michael Strahan was really like playing good football up in New York.
Yes, I do remember that. Okay. So let me and I think I'll be the first one to say I think I've mentioned this to you before. I'm a see it to believe it type of guy, and I heard a lot about Jalen Phillips. And last weekend and this week, he just really keeps. I'm watching this kid play, and I'm saying this kid is a beast. But one, I'll say this: he's not getting drafted over Gregory Rousseau. I'll say that right now, and if I'm wrong, I'll eat my words. He's not better than Gregory Rousseau. I'll say that right now, and if I'm wrong, I'll eat my words. And where I feel like if we had Gregory Rousseau on this roster, one, I think that's going to make Jalen Phillips better. Two, I feel like Gregory Rousseau was really good against the run. When you really look at some of his plays, a lot of his plays he made, he reset the line of scrimmage. He's driving tackles, guards into the backfield, and he's in the backfield before some of those offensive linemen even know what to do. Mm-hmm. But the most important thing is, and maybe I'm reaching when I say this, but I think if we had a Gregory Rousseau, our secondary wouldn't look as bad. Our secondary is getting a lot of slack. They're giving up a lot of passes, and I think they deserve. I think if somebody said, Grant, our cornerbacks is our weakest position, or our secondary is our weakest position, I wouldn't really debate or argue with you, because I think Cam on the defensive line played good. I thought Nesta played good. I thought Phillips played good. The linebacking core, I still got some questions about. But our cornerback position is what I'm really worried, especially when you go up against the Clemson receivers. Those guys are polished and ready to go, and you're going to get a quarterback who's going to throw the ball right on the money to those receivers. But I think even when I look back at the UAB game, DJ Ivey, and everybody knows how hard I am on DJ Ivey about his play. I don't know if those quarterbacks have that much time with the Gregory Rousseau and the J.J. Phillips on the same defensive line, or with him in the middle. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because when Rousseau left, a lot of people said, well, it doesn't matter because we have a lot of defensive line people who can step into his position. Well, I think it does matter, because if we have a dominant defensive line, maybe our secondary isn't guarding as long as they are, because obviously I don't know if they can hold up to guarding top-tier wide receivers long. What would you say to that?
Well, yeah, I think for sure. I think if you put him in there, and like let's say you did put him at defensive tackle, or he played a lot of snaps at D tackle, I think number one, it makes the linebackers immediately better, because if I saw a major weakness from the linebacking core, it's that they reacted slowly. They got caught up in blocks quite a bit. Like there was a couple plays where Jennings and McLeod just put themselves out of the play because they reacted too slowly. A lineman got up to them, and that was it. And they were gone. So, and the Louisville offensive line is they're smart about it. They run that kind of outside zone scheme. Their running back is tremendous when it comes to finding like those open spaces on the move. So I think if you have Rousseau in there, it's a lot harder to control the interior. Not that our defensive tackles played bad, but like you said, his length, his athleticism, he's a very hard person to push back immediately off the line of scrimmage. Kind of like Phillips was, where Phillips was able to get a lot of push on the right tackle and force Cunningham to make plays either to his left or step up and then a go around. I think Rousseau would definitely add a ton. And for sure, yeah, you add Rousseau back to the team, like a guy at that skill level, we're going to definitely be better. I do like the other side of it, that if there was a position to lose a guy, that's probably the one that makes sense too, just because, I think our defensive line, as you mentioned, is by far and away our best position group. And like on the defensive side of the ball, it's so far and away better than the others that it's hard not to see it play after play after play. But like you said, you mentioned before about the linebackers and the DBs. I would say if, between linebackers and DBs, I think the linebackers are the bigger concern for me because I don't think they really know what they have after 2 games. I don't think they know who they trust the most. I don't know if they know who they like to be paired up together. At least at DB, like, it's going to be Blades. He's going to do well. Like he'll make a mistake here or there, but he's pretty consistent. And you have Bubba Bolden, who seems like he is that kind of explosive open field tackler that you're really hoping for from a safety. But I really don't know, like, if there's one linebacker that I'm like, oh, I trust him for sure, which is scary because, 2 weeks in, I thought we would have at least one guy. We're like, all right, we could put it on him, and then the other spot and the striker spot, we'll kind of see how it works out. But 2 weeks in, I don't think I know much more than I did when we started.
Why do you think we haven't seen Avery Huff, Sam Brooks? These are guys that we as a Miami fan base, we've hyped up. I mean, I don't want to say we hyped up Sam Brooks because I saw him in that bowl game almost lead us in tackles. I may be mistaken, but instead we're seeing Jennings, who I have no problem with. But I thought Louisville was doing a lot of holding today. Yeah, I thought there was a lot of holding. Even in the past game, I thought there was a lot of holding. But I do think our linebackers were just a step slow. Ragoni gets in the game. He's a step slow. McLeod missed a couple tackles. He ends up making up for it with a strip sack and, getting a turnover chain. And then Bradley Jennings Jr., he does the same thing. So basically what I'm saying is our linebacking core is inconsistent. I'm confident in our defense, our defensive line, and our safeties, but our linebackers and our corners, what worried me. But why do you think we haven't seen a Sam Brooks at least?
Brooks he gets some snaps in there, but it's almost like when he's in there, you don't really even notice because they rotate through the linebackers so much, which is ironic because last year when it was Shaq and Pinckney, like they never rotated their linebackers ever, so you never saw a backup in there at all, which everyone complained about last year because you wanted to see you get more speed on the field. Now this year they cycle through them so quickly. I think Brooks should be the guy that plays the most. I think he should play in the middle and like give him like that free reign to kind of go sideline to sideline because he has that kind of speed. And like I was talking about a little bit like as the game was going on, and compare him to someone like Jennings, who is a nice player and certainly has increased his stock tremendously from when a lot of people thought like it may never work out for him here. He's a good rotational linebacker, but Jennings and McLeod, they don't have the speed to make a mistake and then still get in on the play. Brooks can make some mental errors here or there and then immediately make up for it by getting himself back into the play. Or on the very next play, he can make like a really big splash play because of that athleticism that he like just naturally innately possesses. I'd rather take my run with him with 6 out there and like let him make a couple of mistakes and let him make a big tackle for loss because he's just so much more athletic than the other guys out there. And you said about Huff too. I'd get him out there as well. Like put those 2 next to each other or do something a little bit like out of the ordinary. And when they have Frierson out there at striker, they really, while yes, it's technically a different position, they really like keep those linebackers on a string, and they'll bring Frierson in to play more of a traditional role. So I wouldn't even be afraid of seeing like how does it look with Frierson, Brooks, and Smith out there all together, like with a lot of speed. And even if it's for like bits and pieces at a time, if you're playing a team like Louisville who likes that zone and likes to move linemen and likes to get their running back outside and likes the Tutu Atwells of the world, like, why not get all the speed you can out there to linebacker spot and see if they can't disrupt some things and see what you can do? Like, that's what we used to do with those linebackers, like just beef up safeties and put them up there, let them run around and make plays. So I don't see the downside of it, especially when you know what you're going to get with the older guys who just don't have that explosiveness to make a lot of big plays.
So my question would be why? Like, why Why do you think that we're basically relying on, McLeod, um, Jennings, um, Ragoni? Because honestly, I mean, here's my thing: is I feel like I think Jennings is somebody who's going to improve throughout the year. Um, McLeod is he missed. I got to rewatch the game, but it seems like he missed a lot of tackles. But bottom line is we're getting gashed through the running game. So, this is why we do this right after a game, because maybe you saw something I didn't. I'm trying to figure out where was the problem at stopping the run, because we couldn't stop. We it felt like the running game gashed us, and then also they caught the ball on us some too. We were a bend but don't break, but we ended up breaking towards the end in the second half.
Well, I think whenever they would show the replays from behind, like behind the linebackers or behind the offensive line, it seemed like the linebackers weren't taking good enough angles to get where they needed to go. And it might have been like a step slow at the start. With an offense like Louisville runs, like they're moving their linemen to try to figure out a way to like create angles, and that running back was so good at making that quick cut back. Haskins about making that quick cut back to find the best hole possible. And I don't think our guys really understood what was going on with it. Or like even the big play with the touchdown run that he had, where he basically reverse field all the way back. That was just a case of defensive end of Roche who overcommitted to what he was trying to do, trying to crash down as he saw the momentum of the play going the other way. And he was in a bad position, basically not able to seal that edge off. Spin move from the back, gets around the outside and scores a touchdown. So some of it was patience. Some of it was our guys taking bad angles. And some of it, I think, was just the defensive tackles. Like you said before, there was some interesting non-holding calls. Like I don't remember one holding call getting called against Louisville, but I saw Jalen Phillips' jersey about every other play over his shoulder pad. So those two things don't tend to equate, but it is what it is. We didn't get the calls, but I think overall, better linebacker play would have helped. I do think Nesta had a really good game at defensive tackle again. I think he's in line to get more and more snaps, but we've been rotating a lot on the defensive line, so we'll see how that goes. We'll see. We'll move ahead to the future. And as far as why the older guys, I think it's just a Manny thing. He's been doing that for years, where it's, he'll run with the guy or a couple guys that he feels like he can trust to do like the same thing over and over, the consistent thing. It's just that, that consistent thing isn't necessarily going to be the best thing, I think, overall for the defense, especially when you need playmakers on that second level so desperately.
All right, guys, we got Chris from Kane's Legacy, also part of Kane's Insight. Tonight, defensively, I mean, I think that's the overall problem we got to look at and we got to figure out. Like I said, 34 points given up. Cunningham throws for 307 yards. And I know it's like, oh, Grant's just throwing out stats. But my thing is, the first half, we bend but don't break. We bend but don't break. That's what they say. We only allow 6 points. In the second half, that's when it was our offense did a great job responding, but our defense ended up giving up a lot of points. We ended up giving up 34 points. What changes would you make in our secondary?
Personnel wise, there's not much you can do. Besides, I know Gervin Hall seemed to get banged up at some point later in the game. I'd try to keep 26 and 21 on the field as much as possible together. We don't run, and we didn't run today, especially a lot of nickel, like a lot of our base defense pretty much consistently throughout the game. So like personnel wise, I guess we're kind of limited based upon just what Manny and Baker don't want to do. The time of possession was like, you didn't even realize it. Like, and I didn't realize it until after the game when I actually went back and took a peek at the overall team stats. They had the ball. Louisville had the ball for 38 minutes of game time, which it didn't feel like it was that much, but Miami had a couple like really quick scoring drives, and they had a couple 3-and-outs too. So it kind of like all blended together. And yards per play, we had 2 more yards per play than they did, 8.1 versus 6.1. So we did some things really well. I just think that like there were some really like horrendous stretches of defense. If you could keep from having those really, really bad stretches of defense that just doesn't make a lot of sense, like having Bubba, as good as Bubba is, you're going to line up a safety way off playing in the slot on Tutu Atwell. If they throw a little out, Tutu's going to catch it. If they run a little rub route between he and the outside receiver, Tutu's going to catch it in space. It's going to happen every single time. So I didn't really get why that was the mentality for Tutu. But whenever they did something better or like they actually used a bracket coverage on him over there on the side, it worked. And they forced Cunningham to make throws that he's not really comfortable making. It's just that when they didn't do that and they played it kind of vanilla, they got beat on pretty easily. So just about a matter of being smart every single play and not just being smart on a couple of plays and hoping for a big turnover like we saw a lot in 2017.
Coach Baker, what would you grade Coach Baker's defensive calling, or him as a defensive coordinator? Because a lot of people's calling for his head. I honestly like when Manny's calling the defense, but obviously I don't know I assume Coach Blake Baker's calling the defense. It's his defense, but maybe Manny has a hand in it. Maybe he doesn't. This or that. No one knows tick for tat. But I just feel like there's a lot of times where I look and, Quincy Roche's out of position. Al Blaze isn't being physical enough, which I thought Al Blaze ended up having a good game, interception. To Corey Couch was just a split off. I think it's easy to go at Coach Baker like a lot of people were, but a lot of times it just seems like our guys weren't making plays. And trust me, I've been on Coach Blake Baker's head. I mean, go back last year when North Carolina, when we ran that crazy blitz or that dropping Russo back in coverage. I've always been on his head. But as far as this season, I just think we aren't making plays defensively. What are your thoughts on Coach Baker and his job as a defensive coordinator?
Well, I think the big thing, like you said, is that you never know exactly how much of it is Blake and how much of it is Manny, because so much like Baker's trying to run like a version of Manny's defense pretty much. And like, I think if there's one really big difference between the two of them is what the defensive line does, because I don't think either of them really love to send a lot of blitzers. If there's one thing about Baker's defense that I cannot stand, and I guess there's two things then, but the one thing that stands out to me is that when he sends some blitzers from the secondary, from the linebackers, he doesn't have them walk up. They blitz from a distance. They blitz from the second level. They blitz from way far outside. And I just, as like on a fundamental level, in terms of understanding like defensive philosophy, it just seemed that it just takes too long to develop and offers up too many easy throws. That's one thing. And then the other thing is having your corners play up tight and press coverage without actually putting hands on receivers. Those are just two things that always just kind of like stood out to me as not really making a lot of sense. But overall, I mean, you have the other team on the field for 38 minutes. A couple of your guys make mistakes here and there. It happens, especially when you score 47 points. That means you're kicking the ball off the other team quite a bit. They're probably going to get a chances to score as well. So it could have been better for sure. I'm not ready to, fire him after this game. I think if there are games where we didn't respond as well, then the discourse will be a lot more hectic. But I don't think this is the one where you're like, oh yeah, get rid of him, it's over. I just think there's a couple things they could definitely clean up, and I think that some conversations with his younger players, like you said, that Corey Couch play, like that was really good coverage by Corey Couch. The receiver just made a great play on the ball, even with one hand at one point making the catch. So it kind of is what it is in a couple different spots. But I mean, I think overall, it just has to figure out a way to utilize his defensive lineman and his momentary aggressiveness without leading to greater issues behind it.
All right, give me your defensive MVP and then somebody you've got to see step up.
Phillips, defensive MVP for sure, 100%. And if it wasn't going to be Phillips, because I think that's just easy because he was so good, I go Bolden, because Bolden made a lot of open field tackles, and Bolden had a lot put on his plate with, trying to keep up with Tutu for as much as he had to. And that's really not what he should be used for, because that's not what you want a safety to have to do. But he made a lot of open field tackles, and he seems to have that kind of like that old school Kane kind of swagger. And, when he hits you, like he gets up, he immediately talks to you about what he just did. I like that. And I like that in a guy who's making big plays. As far as guys that need to step up, just a linebacker. give me one linebacker who can be sideline to sideline, be consistent, make plays. Like, I don't need a guy that's going to be in the Hall of Fame. Like, we have enough of those at linebacker in our history. I just need a guy like, just think back over you can give me a Colin McCarthy level player, like not a guy who's even maybe like third team all ACC, but a guy we can trust. Like, you give me Colin McCarthy, or even like late career Darryl Sharpton, or late career Glenn Cook. Like, I'll take any of those guys. I just can't have guys out there making mistakes every single time and being slow to the ball. Like, we can't have that at Miami.
All right. Let's see. I like those two. I like that Phillips in the linebacking core. Let me ask you this, man. What position is Amari Carter? Like, what position do you think Amari Carter is the best at? Because I don't know. Because sometimes I think he's too slow to play safety. Is he big enough to play linebacker? Should they put him at striker? This is something that I think a lot. But one thing after tonight, after he almost got his 1,000,000th targeting call, I love having him on the field because, one, Amari is very smart how he attacks people. Like, a lot of people say, oh, he almost got a targeting call again, but he always leads with his shoulder. He's just very good at that. And I think just because Manny and the coaching staff has taught him that from day one, and he did a good job of listening and applying, but he gives us that enforcer. Like, sometimes tonight, I'm going to give you my train of thought. I just felt like there wasn't anybody who this Louisville offense was afraid of. I think the quarterback was running for his life. But the receivers, the running backs, they just felt like, okay. But when Amari Carter was in the facility, you knew something was going down. What do you think about where should Amari Carter play? And what do you think about him on the defensive side of the ball?
Well, I think that he probably should have moved up to more of a linebacker role earlier in his career. Probably, right? And I say probably because I don't know like how that would have worked out. Like, who knows, right? I think right now for where he is and what he's been, I think you have him as a third safety that, like you said, you bring him onto the field, you know what he's going to do. He can come up, he can hit people. Like if there's a run on the inside and the guy in the line, running back breaks through the first two levels of defense, he's not afraid to come forward and make a play and make a hit. He can get some momentum going. So in that way, he's not a bad rotational piece to have. I think it could work out. If it were 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, then maybe you move him up to linebacker. And the more I think about him at striker, they do so much with that striker position that I don't know if he would really be the greatest fit as much as we thought it was anymore, especially where I think next year when you have a James Williams and a Chase Smith and those guys coming in, like they're more, I think, where the striker position is going. Like even Romeo Finley was more like those guys where he was a linebacker, but at the same time, like he came from that safety tradition, but he was really good in space. I think Amari, you let him just kind of be the tone setter on the back end and, be a leader and, hype guys up and come in and make a big play here and there, and stick him and keep him with that. And, who knows, maybe he could be a special teamer down the line in the NFL where he'll probably fit better schematically because I think in the NFL level, they'll know for sure he's a linebacker from day one and they'll never even try to make safety work out personally.
All right, so we can't end this episode without showing love to the special teams. First, we got to give a shout out to Lewis Headley because he doesn't make a lot of mistakes, so he never gets talked about. Special teams, you really only get talked about when you make a lot of mistakes. So we want to give a shout out to Lewis Headley. He did a good job. We want to give a shout out to Mark Pope. I thought Mark Pope made a lot of good decisions. Calling for the fair catches. Making a great catch while there was a lot of people around him. I thought he was going to muff it. He ends up making the catch. So I definitely want to give a shout out. And then, of course, Borregales, 4 for 4, 57-yarder. People got 5 for 5 on the extra point. I don't even have to tell Miami Hurricanes fans how important that is. But, Chris, what did you think about the special teams? And is there something that I missed about what the special teams group did? And what was your thoughts on that 57-yarder?
Oh, well, real quick about Headley, like there was the one punt where he absolutely 100% got roughed, and they only call it running into the kicker. It was one of the most absurd roughing the kicker calls I've ever seen in my life. Like the rule is you like unnecessary, like over the top hit of the punter after he like kicks the ball, especially if he hits the kicking leg or the plant leg. He ran full speed into his kicking leg as it was up in the air. Like that's exactly what, like, in the rule book, they'll show a picture of a play just like that. I don't get that at all. But yeah, Headley was great. Pope didn't fumble, so he's good with me. But yeah, Borregales, that 57-yarder, like I kind of saw it like where we were on the field, and like you do the math in your head, like, okay, this is gonna be a long one. And after he hit the first one so easy, I was like, well, I guess they'll probably give him a shot. And when I saw him out there, like I remembered back to last year and even like the past couple of years where, when Bax is going out there for like a 30-yarder, you get like that nervousness in your gut. You're like, oh my God, we're gonna blow this for a short field goal. But like when Borregales went out there, I was confident. I was like, man, like I think he's gonna hit this. I think he's gonna drill this thing, and he did exactly that. I guess that's what happens after you watch him kick multiple 50-yarders against your team. But then later there was the one, I think it was the third field goal, the third of the five, whichever one it was, but where we only needed like a 30-something yarder, and he hit it. And Grant, I don't know if you saw it like this too, but Grant, do you golf at all? You ever been golfing?
Not really. I do it just to mess around and have a couple drinks on the course, but
right, it's same. I'm the same way, and like I'm thinking about how like I really don't know what I'm doing. So if I get a chance to like, if I'm not far from the hole, but it's like I could use like a wedge, well, I'm gonna try it, but I really don't know how hard to hit it. So I'll just kind of like try to like kind of short arm it a little bit, just to like make it go up in the air and look real nice and get somewhere near the hole. He hit that like last field goal almost like he had like a hitting a sand wedge, where it was like just kind of like a little dinky little chip, and it went through 30-something yards. Like you knew he didn't go full speed, like a full kick into it, and he just aimed it just perfectly, as if though he were in practice, kind of messing around. And like this kid is like a savant of kicking. He is as good as a kicker as we've had, and not just because of what he's done this year, but like seeing what he's done in years past. We are very lucky to have him. We're lucky to have his little brother coming in next year, and we're especially lucky to have he and Headley at the same time, because rare in our history have we had two really, really strong assets in the kicking game, and it's a joy to watch for sure.
It is, man, because I think people don't realize, like I said, I think we notice special teams when they make a mistake, but now after seeing that 57-yarder, I'm thinking if we cross midfield, we're in a good position. That's all we got to do.
I think we punted it in the fourth quarter after we hit the 57-yarder, maybe it was the third quarter, and we were at the 50-yard line, like right around the 50-yard line, and we were going to punt. I think it was the one that may even got the almost roughing the kicker, and they showed Borregales warming up on the sideline, like he was just doing it to stay loose. But they showed him on the sideline, like it was that kind of shot that they show whenever they show the field goal kicker warming up, like he's about to run out there. And I'm thinking to myself, do they think he's about to kick this 67-yarder right now? Because that 57-yarder was good from 65. Like it would have been clean from 65. Like is Manny thinking about sending this dude out there to kick a 67-yarder? Because I'm all for it if we're trying to like see this happen right now, just to like set a tone. Like what kind of tone that would be set? Yeah, our kicker can kick it from 65 plus. So what are you guys going to do about it?
All right, man. Well, I'm excited. Let's start this at the end of it. We've had a good conversation, man. I appreciate you being on here. But let's leave the Canes fans with a message. And I guess my message would be, after watching the game, I'm happy with the win. We're 2-0, but I think we got a lot to work on. I think we saw some flaws tonight, and I honestly, when we beat these teams, when I see us doing good things, I kind of automatically think, okay, would we do this versus Notre Dame? Would we be able to do this versus Clemson? And I think we got some work to do. But I think with Cam Harris, with De'Aaron King, I think we'll always be in games. And one thing that I look at is I think we got to improve on the penalties. But De'Aaron King is not going to turn the ball over a lot. He's human. He's going to turn over the ball sooner or later. But these last couple games I've noticed, if he throws the ball in a tight window, it's like he's throwing it out of bounds. He's not really going to put the ball in harm's way. So with De'Aaron King and Cam Harris and with our ability to run the ball, I think that's going to keep us in a lot of games. So I'm happy. I think there's a lot to work on, especially penalties. What would be your final message for Canes fans?
I would say to really appreciate having these guys on the offensive side of the ball. Appreciate Lashley as the coach and the play caller. He'll have rough games. He'll have games where you question 100 decisions that he makes because, things aren't clicking, things aren't working. De'Aaron King will have games where he doesn't throw for 3 touchdowns and 300 yards. But, know that like these two guys are potentially the start of something really strong here on the offensive side that we haven't had in a long time. And they kept saying it on the broadcast. Herb Street said it a couple times. He said it takes him all the way back to Dorsey and Brock, and it takes some fans back even further than that. But just to have a shot, like having those two guys on offense means like you have a shot to score every single drive, and you could trust in an offense, and so the defense can have a bad game. It can have you can have a special teams mistake. You can have this because the offense finally isn't going to make a mistake and not respond. Going back to the first thing Grant said today, so just appreciate having those guys, appreciate having a good kicker, appreciate the steps forward that we've already made, because if, we're not going to win a national championship this year, like it's probably not going to happen. But, if we have a legitimate offense and we have legitimate players coming in and, we could set a tone that, this is legit, this is real, we could be having a much different conversation in 2 or 3 years.
All right. And go ahead, Chris, man. Once again, I want to appreciate you for jumping on the show right after the game. We do this every week. We give our instant reaction. Miami wins today 47-34. Chris, go ahead and let everybody know what you got going on with Canes Legacy this week, man.
Well, at the Twitter account, the day after, we always post a lot of clips from the game and, little commenting here and there, like plays that were big that might, that maybe even they didn't focus on the broadcast, but we saw something that we thought really stood out. A buddy of mine, Billy, that we run the account together, like he does a lot of the analysis stuff. He posts a bunch of those the next day. So that's always something that Cane fans can look at and say like, oh, I saw that, or I thought I saw Nesta make that play. Like there's one that Nesta just pushes the lineman back into the ball carrier, and you're like, wow, like they didn't show a replay on the TV on the broadcast, but like that's one of those plays where you've been waiting for Nesta to make. So that's like one of the ones that'll be on there. So keep an eye out tomorrow for that. And then through the course of the week, just posting, like next week will be big because it's Florida State week. So you can expect a lot of past Miami, Florida State highlights for sure. And then over on Canes Insight, post a couple articles a week. Usually one of them is like a big game that happened during like the course of those days of the game week from history, and then a mailbag. So anyone ever wants to ask us a question on just about anything somewhat Canes related, or like, even the history of the program, we're happy to do it.
All right, guys, y'all make sure y'all go check out my boy Chris. And also, hey, you know what I say? If you rocking with the U, do you know what to do? Hit that like and subscribe button. And I'll see you later. Peace.